Moscow has unexpectedly reached out to Kyiv regarding the end of the war.
It's always possible when several countries, even two countries, come to an agreement. We're always ready to compromise.
Putin has dealt a heavy blow to his own army. A major scandal has erupted in the Kremlin.
Those who do this are scoundrels.
There is a law that must be followed.
For the first time, Russia is discussing its post-war future and has admitted its economy has failed.
Okay, so the war will end and our people will return home from the front. But what awaits them at home? The economy? We're in a recession. Oh, sorry, in a technical recession.
Thanks for the likes and comments, everyone. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss our upcoming videos.
It's impossible to ignore the recent remarks by our foreign minister. There's clear concern and confusion over the erosion of the so-called Anchorage spirit. It takes two to tango, and a handshake requires two hands. Moscow's hand, for its part, is ready for a handshake right now, ready to work together on something constructive. You know, I keep wondering why this keeps happening, why the Anchorage spirit we pinned so many hopes on turns out to be so fragile, why we keep hitting a wall, why it simply doesn't work. And I don't have an answer. I just wish the Anchorage spirit were more like an expensive political fragrance, not some knockoff American perfume made in Alaska.
The negotiations are ongoing, and as the United States has begun pushing Putin toward a deal unfavorable to Russia, Moscow has started lamenting the so-called Anchorage spirit, expressing deep confusion over why the American president refused to hand Ukraine over to them and instead insisted on fair security guarantees for Kyiv, as well as preserving the country's sovereignty and independence. For the fourth day in a row, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has been giving hour-long interviews to various international and domestic outlets, repeating almost word for word that the West is forcing Putin into a peace agreement with Ukraine, whether he likes it or not. In this context, Lavrov sounding almost regretful notes that Putin liked the agreement discussed in Alaska, but does not like the one now on the table. Yet there's nothing they can do about it. If the United States says so, they have to grit their teeth and actually begin searching for compromises with Ukraine.
What personally gives you hope today that these negotiations will actually lead to results?
Hope comes only from your own truth. Compromises are always possible when several states, even just two, negotiate. We are always ready for compromises. Simply put, for a balance of interests. The most important thing is that the legitimate interests of every state are taken into account. We want to ensure our own security, like any normal country, interested in its continued existence and in its people developing under the most favorable external conditions. Compromises cannot concern key, fundamental principles on which the life of the state, and above all, the lives of millions and millions of people, depend. In Anchorage, we found approaches that opened the path to peace. On that basis, it was entirely realistic to fairly quickly agree on a final settlement treaty. The Trump administration made an attempt in the documents that circulated in many different versions during the last quarter of last year, after the meeting in Alaska. All subsequent versions are the result of attempts to force the issue. The American initiative, coming from Zelensky and, above all, from his patrons in Britain, Germany and France, speaks of security guarantees, not with Russia's participation, but against Russia. In other words, we stop, and we won't legally recognize anything, but de facto, we stop, provided that you give us ironclad security guarantees, ratified by your parliaments, and deploy troops. According to what was recently written in the Financial Times, these guarantees would mean the automatic start of a war against the Russian Federation by all the forces of the contingents deployed there, NATO forces, with direct support from the United States. Any incident deemed unacceptable would serve as the trigger for such a war against Russia. As for Zelensky and his clown's ability to stage provocations, it probably doesn't even need to be explained.
But the reality is that this is just a story meant for a not very discerning Russian audience. In practice, Russia will accept whatever it's told because it's in no position to bargain right now. At the same time, we're seeing Putin in the middle of talks, effectively throwing his own army under the bus, the very army he claims is bravely defending Russia's interests. After Russian troops lost access to Starlink, sparking panic in the ranks, another major blow followed. This time, it was a stab in the back because the Kremlin itself harmed its own military. Russian authorities began throttling and even blocking the Telegram messenger inside the country, with Peskov saying the company had failed to comply with Moscow's demands. The problem is that Russian frontline communication is now largely built around that very app. Soldiers and pro-government commentators are openly panicking, saying Moscow set them up and, without asking anyone, simply left its own defenders without communications and at the mercy of circumstances.
Maybe Vladimir Vladimirovich will hear us. The Telegram platform lets us exchange information quickly and effectively counter enemy drones. And now you want to take this tool away from us? Well, those who sow the wind will reap the storm. We are worthy sons of our people. We are not against it. We are always ready to strike the enemy on any front, no matter how hard or easy it may be for us. But now, the very process of information exchange and coordination, built with enormous effort, is becoming more complicated. Believe me, I know this better than anyone because I was the one setting it all up. I'd like to ask, did you ask us before deciding to ban this? Did any of you come and find out whether this would actually be useful for Russia?
My call sign is DJ, and I'm currently on combat duty. I'm a member of the Albatross group. We fight enemy UAVs to keep them from reaching our beloved homeland, Russia. Telegram is our only means of communication. Please don't take it away from us.
Who's slowing down Telegram? Go to the front, to the so-called special military operation. The guys shedding blood there. It's their only connection to their families. What are you doing? I'm calling things what they are. What are you doing? The people behind this are scum. Scum! People are dying there, dying for Russia, for the Russian world. And what are you doing?
And many such messages, including outright threats toward the Kremlin, have begun flooding social media from Russian soldiers themselves. It's easy to see why. They're the ones dealing with the chaos now unfolding in the Russian army along the front line. Even Putin's mouthpiece Solovyev criticized Moscow's decision, calling it almost a betrayal. He accused the Kremlin, first, of cutting him off from hundreds of thousands of his Telegram audience, and second, of harming their heroic boys on the battlefield.
If they tell me this tool is being taken away, fine. What tool are they going to offer me instead? How am I supposed to recover the audience that's on Telegram? Yes, I understand this isn't a major state matter. It's simply a user's point of view. I communicate with many people who are currently fighting and stationed at the front through Telegram. I wonder whether they feel these slowdowns and restrictions where they are, given that so much frontline communication happens exclusively through Telegram. It's neither good nor bad. It's simply a fact. We are ready to offer them a convenient, simple, and clear transition to a secure system. We intend to work only with a national messenger. To do that, it must have competitive features, and most importantly, user-friendly functionality.
So there are two possibilities here. Either Putin has deliberately started throwing his own troops under the bus, which is entirely plausible given the pressure from the United States and an economy that can no longer sustain the war in its current form. Or he simply doesn't understand how his army actually operates, and did this by mistake, exposing his men to death or capture.
It's extremely hard to work when there's total boneheadedness at the top. It feels like we act first and only think afterward. You still haven't managed to create an alternative to Telegram. You're herding everyone into Max and Vkontakte by force, and the result is broken coordination and soldiers getting killed. I'd like all these brilliant minds to come to the so-called Luhansk People's Republic and talk to the fighters, or go to Shebekino and hear what the locals really think about them. After that, it'll be nothing but swearing. Use your brains. What the hell are you doing?
Now, a few words about Russia's economy and why I say it can no longer sustain the war in its current format. More and more people close to the Kremlin have begun openly complaining that the economy is in bad shape. Notably, even so-called patriots have, for the first time, started wondering what happens after the so-called special operation ends with a budget hole like this. Recently, Solovyev openly said for the first time that the Russian economy is already in recession, that the situation is getting worse by the day, and that once the boys come back from the front, the state will have nothing to offer them in return. As a result, Russia could face internal turmoil, because it's only logical those returning soldiers will eventually ask Putin, what were we actually fighting for?
All right then, the war ends, we win. Great, people return home from the front. And what's waiting for them there? An economy capable of creating jobs for 500,000 people so that those used to earning over 200,000 rubles a month would agree to work for at least 150,000? Can you show where salaries like that actually exist? Just tell us. Moscow used to show impressive numbers. Yet even in my beloved city, despite the Moscow government's titanic efforts, restaurants are closing, shops are closing. Why? Because people lost money. Entire districts of newly built housing stand empty across the country because who can afford to buy them? And what is the government trying to achieve? Right, the main thing is not to use scary words like stagflation. If everything is bad and we still can't fix these terrible indicators, then we'll just call it technical. We don't have a recession, we have a technical recession. And why technical? Negative growth dynamics? What is all this verbal gymnastics supposed to accomplish? Explain it to me, this throwing around of meaningless terms. Stable development trajectories. Just imagine someone coming to Stalin and saying, "We finally raised the Soviet economy and put it on a path of stable growth." He'd say, "Are you out of your minds? The central bank acts in ways nobody understands and makes forecasts based on the madness of its own actions." No, they say, the economy simply cannot grow by more than 1%. Well, of course. If you've strangled it hard enough, it'll eventually just die.
And that's it for today. Thanks for watching, everyone. Let me know what you think in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already.